How to remove and reinstall the starter motor on an Audi A4 1.8T Quattro. First, disconnect the ground strap from the battery. And here's a word of warning. This procedure is going to be very tedious. You're going to be working under very limited space. So if your patience level is very low, do not even attempt this repair. And let's get to it. First, we're going to remove these two Allen bolts. I'm using an 18-inch extension and I'm coming in from the side. Plenty of space. You're going to remove this first one that holds a bracket to the starter. This is an H6, Allen head H6. And then come down and remove this bracket that holds some lines together. This is an H8. Remove this bolt to remove this bracket, and then you're going to be able to move some lines around. So first off, remove these two bolts. One thing that I forgot to mention about this top bolt is that you're going to need a universal joint because you're coming at it from an angle. And that puts you at risk of stripping it out. So after removing those two bracket bolts, you're going to remove these two nuts, securing the top bracket. Come in with an 8mm ratcheting wrench, and you got plenty of space. Even from the side. From the front, you have plenty of space, but I got my camera right there right now. With the nuts removed, you'll see that the nut furthest away from the engine holds a cable with a bracket, and it also has a small spacer. So keep that in mind when putting everything back together. And we can now take the bracket off. And with this bottom bracket removed or loosened up, we can now access this hard to reach H5 Allen head. Go ahead and remove that. Got plenty of space to remove it now. This is what that bracket looks like. Those two lines sit in those two spaces. Reach up here at your starter solenoid and disconnect this connector. You're just gonna wiggle it out. Carefully wiggle it out. To remove that top nut, I'm using a Icon extended reach ratcheting serpentine belt toolkit with the 13mm installed. And that gives me plenty of space. This is the hardest to remove fastener. You're basically using that serpentine belt tool just to crack that nut loose. Then you can thread it out by hand. First, you're gonna have this strap that's connected to this bracket, and then you're gonna have this other strap that comes from the top. It might be a little stuck, so you might need a pick to pull it out. Right from right here. Time to remove the two bolts holding the starter in position. The bolt at the bottom is shorter than the bolt at the top. We're going to begin with the bolt at the bottom. Socket size 16mm for both. For the bottom one, you're going to need a 12-inch extension. And as you can see, come from below, and you have plenty of space. Plenty of space. At the passenger side, remove the wheel and remove the splash guard. This vehicle doesn't have one. We're going to remove the last starter bolt, the top one, from this area. You can easily reach it from here. All you need is your 16mm shallow socket and your wrench. Make sure the cables are tucked away and slide the starter motor forward. There's still a heat shield attached to it. You're going to have to remove this clamp. Use a 7mm and a 12-inch extension to reach it from under here. Fully remove the clamp, and then you're able to slide these two plastic clamps that are holding the heat shield onto the starter motor. With the heat shield removed, you're going to twist the starter so the solenoid is at the bottom. The solenoid is looking at like around 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock. And from there on, you should have enough space to just pull it out. See, the solenoid is at the bottom. And since we loosened up these lines, this shouldn't be that much of a problem. Just gotta slowly work it. Solenoid at the bottom, and there we go, you guys. Here's a brief overview of that heat shield. It's just held in place by this clamp. And you have to fully remove that clamp, fully disconnect it to remove this. This wire is going to be blocking you. So just fully disconnect this, and then the heat shield comes right off. When you put it back on, it rests against the solenoid right here, like that. Now we're going to reinstall our starter. Solenoid is facing up, and it should just fit it right into position. Snug up the bottom bolt. I was able to get my hand in there and thread it in by hand. Now it's time for the hardest part, getting the heat shield back into position. Make sure your clamp is on there on the two holes with this facing down. And we're going to feed this into the starter motor. Those lines are going to make the job a little more difficult, but we have them loose. And our starter motor has its heat shield. All we got to do is now get that clamp over the solenoid and under to this side, to the driver's side, so we can tighten it up. I snugged up the clamp with a 7mm deep socket. I didn't use a ratchet. I just threaded it by hand until it was snug. Man, what a big hassle it was getting that clamp back on there. What a nightmare, right? The top bolt is torqued to 65 Newton meters, which is about 48 foot-pounds. I left it snug since I could only turn it one tooth at a time, and access to it was very limited. Tighten that bottom bolt to 45 Newton meters, which is about 33.2 foot-pounds. Finally, we're gonna tighten that clamp with a ratchet and a deep 7mm. That cursed clamp is finally going to get tightened. Get the two cable ends together onto that stud. Then you're going to connect that white connector onto that single pin. From there, you can snug up the nut that holds those two cable ends. Get the bracket back into position and loosely thread in that bolt. Then on the left side of the bracket, we have a spacer and that bracket for that cable. And then you're going to snug up the two nuts that hold the bracket to the starter motor. And finally, you're going to snug up that first bolt you put in. Then you're going to secure this bracket onto that bolt hole. And then you're going to secure the transmission cooler lines to this bracket. Snug up those bolts. This is what those brackets should look like once they're assembled. Add the negative ground strap to the battery, and that should complete this repair. I'm not a fan of how this repair went. If you look up the service information, Audi's going to tell you to just remove the components at the front of the starter like this, and then remove the two bolts. And then the install would be the reverse of the removal, which I'm not a fan of because we have the heat shield, we have a bunch of lines here in the way. So I'm not really a fan of how this went, but we got it done. If you follow this video and you went through this tedious procedure, let me know how it went for you, and see you in the next one.